Whoa, that is sharp. This is a $4 Smith's knife sharpener, these are two $30 knife sharpeners, and this is a $60 Workshop Precision Adjust knife sharpener. And to see which is best, I've got this PT50 series sharpness tester, which can test the force of a knife down to the gram. I'll go straight into testing these sharpeners very shortly, but first let me very quickly explain the knife that we're going to be testing them on, because the knife we use is a key factor you need to be aware of for this sharpness test. Don't skip this bit, it's important. This is an 8-inch Wusthof Classic chef's knife, and there's a very good reason I've chosen this knife to sharpen with. The steel this knife uses is called X50 CR MOV15. It's a durable German steel with a HRC or steel hardness of 57 to 58 for this particular knife, depending on where you look. If you look at many of the knives from Wusthof, Willing, Messermeister, Victorinox, Mercer, they all use the same steel. Depending on how the knife has been heat treated, that hardness might vary between 56 and 58 HRC, but fundamentally testing with this knife serves as a good proxy for knives from a whole range of different brands. The hardness of this knife gives a great middle range. There's also an important reason why I'm using a knife with a full bolster, and I'll demonstrate why later in the video. Now that you know about the knife, let me run through how this sharpness test is going to work. I'm going to dull down the knife to the same level before using the sharpeners to bring back the edge. Now it's important to keep in mind that the best sharpener isn't necessarily the one that creates the sharpest edge. Because if one creates a slightly duller edge than another one, but it does it in quarter of the time, then that might be the sharpener that you prefer to use in the real world anyway. We're going to be super accurate on this test and use this sharpness tester. And it's important to know how this device works so that when we see the results, we're all on the same page. I have seen so many YouTube channels using this tester in an incorrect and misleading way. So you need to watch this part of the video to make sure you don't get tricked by false sharpness claims of people who use this tool incorrectly. The sharpness tester measures the cutting power required to cut through this synthetic wire. The less force required, the sharper the blade. You can also reference the cutting force against this sharpness guide, so you can relate the numeric cutting force figure to real-world examples of various blade types. The key things here are that the knife has to rest and pivot on this slot, and the pressure has to be applied to the wire slowly. Cutting down too quick will give a reading that makes the knife look far sharper than it really is. And that's how some people try to mislead their viewers into thinking that their knives are sharper than they really are.
You sit on a throne of lies.
And with that said, it's now time for my least favourite part of these videos. I need to dull down the knife. So that now measures a force of 1035 grams, which is right about here on the scale. Severely rolled edges, that is a very dull knife. I'm going to aim to dull the knife down to this kind of level before testing each sharpener. Welcome to the first test. This is the Smith's $4 pull-through knife sharpener. It has a carbide slot, which is very hard and quickly strips material off the blade, and then it has this ceramic slot, which is more fine and polishes and finishes off the edge. It's a simple device. I have used this sharpener before and it worked better than I expected it to. But what I'm really interested in is seeing the reading that we get from this sharpener and how that compares with the other sharpeners in the test. I'm going to speed up these sharpening sections so you don't have to watch endless footage of me slowly sharpening. But here I'm starting, of course, on the hard carbide slot. It does start to strip steel from the knife pretty quickly. But the tricky thing with this sharpener though, which you can tell from the footage, is that because it's so small, it's super unstable. You have to really clamp down with the hand holding the sharpener to try and keep it steady, but it's pretty much impossible to keep it perfectly straight. As a result, keeping a constant and steady edge along the blade is tricky, and it does require a bit of focus. Okay, let's see what kind of difference that's made. .335. Okay, that's pretty good actually, to be fair. Let's take a look at the comparison. .335 puts it right here, just on the middle of the new high-end cutlery edge. Pretty impressive for a $4 knife sharpener, to be fair. One thing that can drastically improve the edge of a blade after it's been sharpened is a strop. Now they're pretty inexpensive. This one's made by BeaverCraft. I'll put a link down in the description, but it's made in Ukraine, which is pretty cool. Let's see if this can make a difference. Okay, so let's see what difference the strop has made, if any. There is a bit of a difference, 285. So that's pretty good. Puts it here, just at the bottom of the new high-end cutlery edge, I'd say. Amazing for a $4 knife sharpener. It took me about a minute and 45 seconds to sharpen that. This is a $30 pull-through adjustable angle knife sharpener. This particular one is sold by a YouTuber called Ray the Sharpener, but it's essentially a white label product, and there are loads of this style of sharpener which are pretty much just as good as the next one. The big difference with this sharpener and what makes it different from the $4 one is that it allows you to set the angle of the sharpener to the same angle as that of the knife. So on our knife, the Wusthof, has an angle of 14 degrees at the edge, so we can set this to 14 and then use that to sharpen it with. That of course is supposed to give you a better edge, but let's see for ourselves. That's suitably dull, I think. So let's set the angle to the minimum, 14 degrees to match the Wusthof, set the timer and off we go. So same as before, I started on the hard carbide slot. It's pretty much immediately noticeable when you're using it that it strips off a lot more of the steel, much more easily than the $4 sharpener. And because it has a good wide base and handle, it's a lot easier to keep it steady when sharpening, which should result in a more even and overall sharper edge. I do have one tip if you use this in your kitchen though. Even though I don't do it here, it's quite easy to accidentally pull the knife back too far, and because you're pushing down on the knife at the same time, you can cut straight down into your kitchen worktop, so I'd advise putting a cutting board underneath it when you're using it. Okay, so I've swapped to the ceramic side to finish off the blade, and I'm just focusing on getting a good, even finish to the edge. I think the edge feels sharper than the $4 knife sharpener did, but let's test it out. $240. Nice. So at $240 puts it right here, sort of in between the two bands of new high-end cutlery edge at the bottom of that and at the top of utility razor blade. That's pretty impressive, to be fair. What I'm going to try now is just a quick strop of the knife, see if that makes any difference. Okay, let's try it out. 185, whoa. So that puts it firmly into this category, utility razor blade sharpness. From a pretty simple $30 pull-through knife sharpener, that is pretty impressive. Clearly, the angle adjustable element of this does actually make a difference. So far that's some pretty good results. Honestly, better than I was expecting. Now this is a $30 electric knife sharpener, and let me quickly show you how it works. So it has two circular grinding stones, and one stone is more coarse than the other. So you have a coarse and a fine stone. When you turn it on, the motor spins the stone super fast and it grinds away the edge of your knife. So let's give it a go. Oh, that'll do. It's probably worth pointing out that this sharpener is really loud. Not that it's really an issue, but it's worth knowing in advance. Unfortunately, this sharpener doesn't have any kind of angle adjustable element, so you basically just have to try and guide the knife along the angle which feels right. So it's never going to result in the cleanest edge, particularly since the grinding stones are set down in the grooves, so you can't really see where the knife makes contact with the stone. You just have to go off feel and sound. Those deep grooves do cause another issue though, and it's why I chose to test using a knife with a full bolster. Because the grooves are thin, the bolster can't fit between them, which means that the section of the blade closest to the bolster can't be sharpened, which is an issue. You can see it pretty clearly here, where the edge near the bolster has a totally different reflection to the rest of the blade, and it's still totally dull. Okay, let's see how that does. 320, not bad. So that puts it here, pretty much bang in the middle of new high-end cutlery edge. But I'll just show you the difference if we try and test the bit of the blade that is near the bolster, which has basically not been sharpened at all. Oh, there we go, still basically completely dull. $245. So that puts it firmly sort of around here. pretty good results. This is the WorkSharp Precision Adjust Knife Sharpener, and it's the one on the list that I'm most excited about. This clamp holds the knife in place, and then you can set a super precise sharpening angle to match your knife edge. And it has 3 different stones, a coarse one at 320 grit, a finer one at 600 grit, and then a super fine ceramic stone for polishing the edge. It sounds great, but it still does have some issues. The arm of the clamp has a small amount of flex, so it doesn't hold the knife perfectly level when pressure is applied, which can affect the angle. The other issue is that it only goes down to 15 degrees, whereas the angle of the Wurstoff is 14 degrees. So we're going to have to sharpen at 15 degrees. Even so, I've used this sharpener in the past and it delivered what felt like razor sharp edges. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how well this sharpener does. Sharpening with the WorkSharp takes a little bit longer than the others, so I'm going to have to grab a seat. But before we begin, this channel is coming up to the 1,000 subscriber mark and I'm going to be testing some really unique knives and knife sharpeners in upcoming videos. So if this video has been helpful, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. Each and every subscriber massively helps out the channel and makes me very happy. When I've used this sharpener in the past, I felt it's given some pretty awesome results, but I've never had a sharpeners tested to see what it had really done. The other sharpeners have been pretty impressive so far, so I was really excited to see how the WorkSharp really compares and whether it's actually worth it, because it doesn't just cost more, it's a lot more labour intensive as well. I started off on the coarse stone and you basically have to grind up and down the edge, slowly working your way along the whole of the edge. There's no shortcut here, but the fact that you can select the exact degree of the edge you want should mean the results are way better. The device makes the knife easy to flip round while still being held in place with the clamp. I moved down to the finer grinding stone and repeated the same process again, slowly grinding up and down along the knife. It is really frustrating that there is some flex in the clamp arm, especially since the rest of the device is so precise. WorkSharp do have some more expensive models using this same concept, so I intend on testing those out in the future as well. Hopefully that issue has been fixed. You really start to see the difference when you switch to the final ceramic stone. You can't see it so well on the footage, but as you start to polish up and down along the edge, it does begin to reveal a beautifully smooth mirror edge finish that the other sharpeners just don't give you. It's a pretty satisfying part of the sharpening process. That took a bit longer than the others. And let's see what we get. Whoa, that is sharp. 165. That puts it here, right at the bottom of utility razor blade sharpness. Let's see if stropping can make any difference. Whoa, 115. Nice.
Nice.
I mean, we're not getting far off the realms of double edge razor blade, but probably still just at the bottom of utility razor blade. Pretty impressive. With the testing finished, I'd say the two that came out on top were the adjustable angle pull-through knife sharpener for speed relative to sharpness results, and the WorkSharp, which did create by far the sharpest edge, but it just took a lot longer. So if you skipped ahead to this point in the video, then I'd recommend going back to this point and this point in particular so that you can see those two sharpeners. And if you want recommendations of great knives that cost only a third the price of the big brands, then you need to watch my video here where I compare a range of $50 knives against a $170 Wurstoff knife.